She's barefoot. No gear. No weapon. You really think this is the one who's been picking off trained recon squads? The lieutenant scoffed. He took one step forward, then vanished. No scream, no warning. The jungle simply swallowed him whole with a wet crunch. The squad froze. Somewhere in the treetops, something creaked like a noose under tension. Then the laughter came. Soft. Mocking. Female. And close. The green lung wasn't a place most people went twice. Deep in the belly of the equatorial zone, it was a tangle of humidity, old-growth trees, and vines thick enough to carry a man's weight. Birds didn't sing there. The silence was its own alarm. When the first patrol went missing, command chalked it up to poor navigation. When the second disappeared, they blamed the terrain. After the third squad vanished, entirely, not even a tooth left behind, they sent an echo team. 5 veterans. Heavily armed. Full gear. All of them laughing as they stepped off the dropship. Sergeant Rollo was the loudest. 6'5" and built like a freight container, he lit a cigar the moment they landed and said, "Jungle ghosts? I eat those for breakfast." He was chewing nicotine gum by the time the lieutenant dropped. The others, Corbin, Jays, Min, and the tech, Lev, spread out across the clearing, rifles raised, helmets pinging with incoming satellite feeds. Static. No heat signatures, no movement, no sign of where the lieutenant had gone. Just a shallow hole where the vines had parted like a trick door and then resealed. "She's close," Min whispered. He was the youngest. Not green, just less scarred than the others. "You see those markings on the trees?" They all turned. Triangular slashes carved into the bark, 3 in a line, then a swirl. Old-school symbols. Not tribal. Not decorative. Tactical. Jays stepped forward, brushing moss off the nearest trunk. "Looks like broken arrow code." Lev blinked. "That's impossible. That unit went dark 3 years ago. Whole squad Kia in Bolivia." Min shook his head. "No, just classified. My old CO said they pulled some of them out. Changed their names. Sent them off-grid." Corbin chuckled, voice low. "Well, if this chick's one of them, someone seriously messed up handing her jungle clearance." They kept moving, tension high now. No birds. No insects. Just the sound of boots crunching leaves and the occasional soft snap that could have been a twig, or something watching. Rollo led point. Every few feet he stopped and sniffed the air like a bloodhound. "Nothing. She's gone," he muttered. But his voice had lost that punch of bravado. They all felt it. The kind of creeping chill that didn't come from weather. That sense of being watched with intelligence. With interest. 10 minutes later, they found the first rifle. It was one of theirs. Freshly stripped, the barrel wiped clean and hung from a vine like a winged chime. Tied to it was a bootlace, knotted at the end like a trophy. Jays reached for it. Min stopped him. "No. Don't. It's bait." They scanned the area. No traps. No wires. But still, something felt wrong. They backed off. Then came the smell. Burning oil and old sweat. Rollo sniffed again and turned just in time to see a pack drop from the trees, one of their own bags split open, gear scattered. Inside was a recording device. Lev played it. The sound that poured out was horrific. Screams, static, desperate cries for extraction. Then, beneath it, a female voice speaking calmly. Not threatening. Not angry. Just amused. "You boys always come in loud," the voice said. "Like thunder trying to sneak up on the rain. But it's cute. Really. I miss the company." Jays clicked off the recorder. "Okay, so either this chick's nuts, or she's trying to mess with our heads." Rollo growled. "Doesn't matter. We keep pushing. Find her. Neutralize." Min hesitated. "Sir, maybe we should fall back. Wait for reinforcements. She's baiting us, and it's working." Rollo turned to him slowly. "You scared, Private?" Min didn't answer. He just looked at the trees. No one noticed that 2 of their motion sensors had gone offline. The squad kept moving until dust bled into the canopy. The jungle came alive at night, but not with the usual sounds. This wasn't the hiss of frogs or buzz of night insects. This was mechanical. Controlled. Low clicking sounds in specific patterns. Lev stiffened. Those are coded signals. Binary pings. Morse conversion. She's triangulating. Jays looked around. How the hell does she know our network bandwidth? Min didn't respond. He was staring at a patch of brush that looked off. Too smooth. Too uniform. He stepped forward, poked it with the barrel of his rifle. The ground caved instantly. A pit. Not deep, but spiked. Rollo grabbed Min's vest and yanked him back just in time. Corbin cursed. That's the 3rd trap in a 2-click radius. These aren't improvised. These are mapped. Calibrated. Set for human weight and movement. Jays exhaled slowly. This isn't survival. This is a hunting grid. They stopped for the night in a defensive triangle, sensors up, rifles aimed outward. Rollo sat with his back to a tree, chewing quietly, then muttering. Tomorrow, we bait her. We use Min as forward and force a reaction. She wants to play with us? Let's return the favor. Min didn't protest. He was too busy replaying the sound of her voice in his head. Not mad. Not desperate. That calm, dry amusement. Like she was watching them stumble through her home, and just waiting to see which one would fall next. Somewhere deep in the canopy above, a pair of silent eyes blinked, then vanished into the shadows again. The morning came with a wet fog that clung to their gear and coated their faces in damp silence. The jungle didn't wake up like most forests. There was no gradual chirping or warm rays breaking through the trees. It just stayed still, watching. That's what it felt like. Min didn't say much as he stepped out of the defensive triangle, moving in a zigzag pattern just like they trained. They'd rigged him up with a shoulder cam, a silent beacon, and enough backup coverage to level a small village. He was the bait. And he knew it. What he didn't know was if that was going to be enough. Rollo gave the hand signal, and the rest of the team fell in around the perimeter, spacing tight and weapons ready. They were close now, closer than anyone had ever gotten. Their tracker data had finally picked something real, footprints. Bare, small, deep in the earth, like she moved with intention, not panic. But the strangest part? The prints never went in a straight line. They circled. Doubled back. Stopped in places where no one had any reason to stop. Min noticed a small pile of stones stacked on a stump. He paused and stared at it. Don't touch that, Jays said over comms. Could be a sensor node or worse. Min nodded but didn't move. Something about the stones seemed familiar. Then it clicked. There were exactly 7. Arranged like a sniper's range marker. It wasn't just a trap. It was a sign. She was telling them something. That they were in the wrong place. That they were being watched. Or that she'd already planned what came next. They advanced anyway. That was the mission. 10 meters past the stone marker, they lost contact with Min's cam. Total blackout. Not a disconnect, just blank. Lev started rerouting signal paths, boosting thermal. Nothing came up. Then, just as suddenly, the chem kicked back in. Min stood still. Breathing hard. He was staring down into something. The rest of the team rushed toward his signal. When they reached him, they saw it. A drop hole. 5 feet wide. Lined with sharpened wood and reinforced spikes. Not just a pungy pit, this was something else. Something calculated. There was an old helmet at the bottom. Not Min's. Not theirs. One from the first squad. Inside it, someone had tucked a note. Lev lowered a claw and retrieved it. The handwriting was clean. Precise. Written in ink made from crushed berries or soot. It read, "This is where you fall. This is where I stood." Underneath, a single word. Arrowhead. Min looked up at the others. No one spoke. Corbin finally muttered, "She's ex-Arrowhead. That unit didn't just vanish. They buried themselves. Rollo looked angry for the first time. Not the explosive kind of anger. The silent, smoldering kind that meant he didn't like being lied to. Especially not by command. Especially not when it got his people killed. They didn't have time to process it. A sudden whoosh of air zipped overhead, and a net snapped tight around Corbin, yanking him backward into the underbrush. Screaming, flailing, and then silence. The rest of them sprinted toward the sound, cutting vines and crashing through leaves. But when they reached the spot, there was nothing left except Corbin's vest, neatly hung over a branch, and a small mirror angled to reflect the sky. Min crouched near it and cursed. The mirror wasn't just for distraction. It was calibrated. Positioned precisely to bounce signal light from their own drones. Lev confirmed it a second later. She's jamming our scans using our own equipment reflections. She's using light echo patterns to scatter our thermal overlays. I've never even seen someone do this manually before. Rollo looked down at the vest. He took it, folded it, and tucked it under his arm. We keep moving. No more splitting. Min, you're center now. Lev, stick to my hip. Jays, cover rear. We're not out of this grid until we find her, or bodies. The deeper they went, the more signs they found. Not of her, but of themselves. Duplicates. Misdirection trails. She'd built a field of mirrors, false trails, fake markers, and audio lures. At one point, Jays thought he saw Min's reflection ahead of them, only to realize the real Min was behind him. The jungle was no longer a jungle. It was a maze. And the rules belonged to her. Suddenly, the calm sparked with static, then a voice broke through. Her voice. Calm, amused like always. You're good, she said. Better than the last batch. But your big guy? Rollo? He's too angry. Anger makes you stomp. Stomping gets you caught. Lev tried to triangulate the signal. She laughed before he even started. Don't bother. That's not me live. It's recorded. Looped through 2 miles of vine wire and bouncing off a broken bot you dropped 3 clicks ago. See, you think you're hunting me. But really you're just walking through my story. Jays shouted. Why us? Why all this? There was a pause. Then the voice replied, almost gently. Because you came here thinking I was prey. And that's the last mistake anyone makes in this place. Then silence. The team didn't talk for a while. There was nothing left to say. They were being hunted, not for blood, not for vengeance, but for education. She was teaching them something. Or maybe teaching someone else through them. Maybe this whole run was just a live demonstration for a higher audience. They stopped for the night again, this time against Rollo's orders. The trees were too thick to see the sky, and the jungle floor was too unstable to sleep. But their eyes were bloodshot, their hands trembling, and their nerves fraying like old rope. Rollo sat at the edge of the firelight, running a whetstone over his blade again and again, muttering something no one could hear. Min leaned back against a rock and whispered, She's not trying to kill us. Lev gave him a look. You sure about that? Min nodded slowly. Yeah. If she wanted to, we'd all be gone. This is a lesson. A test. She's seeing who learns, and who doesn't. Jays looked into the trees and muttered. Well then I hope we're fast learners. No one laughed. Above them, a rope bridge strung between 2 massive trees held still in the wind. On it, a lone figure crouched in perfect silence, eyes watching, arms wrapped around her knees. The traps below were ready. And she wasn't done yet. The third morning felt heavier than the last 2, and it wasn't just the humidity sinking into their clothes and minds like a second skin. It was the weight of being outplayed, again. Rollo hadn't said a word since sunrise. He just sat sharpening the same combat blade, checking his mags like they might somehow multiply. Min had barely slept. Jays was twitching at every sound, his fingers flexing against the safety of his rifle like they were debating whether to stay on or off. Lev's hands trembled slightly as he calibrated a fresh thermal scan that returned, once again, nothing. They broke camp without discussion. No one wanted to be the first to say it, but the jungle was closing in. Not literally, but psychologically. The same way a chessboard does when you're already 6 moves behind and the other player hasn't spoken since the match began. She was that player. Quiet. Unseen. Always a step ahead. Less than a click from their last camp, they saw her. She stood in a clearing, alone, ankle-deep in a muddy stream bed that curved like a scar through the trees. Her clothes were shredded at the sleeves, her hair matted, her skin smeared with mud and streaks of what might have been ash or charcoal. Her arms hung loose at her sides. She wasn't armed. Not visibly. Just standing there, watching them as if she'd been waiting all morning. Jays raised his rifle first. Rollo barked, "Hold!" They all froze. Min blinked slowly. "She's not running." Rollo narrowed his eyes. "She wants something." The tension was sharp, electric. The kind of moment that shouldn't stretch more than a second, but felt like minutes. Then Rollo gave the nod. Jays moved first. Not with subtlety. Not with strategy. Just brute force, barreling forward with weapon drawn and intention clear. He stepped into the shallow water, and vanished beneath the surface with a splash that sounded too wrong, too final. Min shouted and ran forward, but Rollo caught his vest and yanked him back. They all stared at the water. It was still. Flat. No bubbling. No flailing. Just a faint trail of crimson curling up through the mud like smoke in reverse. Lev took a cautious step forward, scanned the bank, and then saw it, a row of thin bamboo poles angled underwater, holding up a layer of woven reeds. A false floor. Beneath it, sharpened stakes, rusted but deadly, buried in the streambed. Jays wasn't coming back. They backed away as the woman turned, slowly, and walked into the trees. Rollo cursed under his breath and followed. Min and Lev stayed close, their pace quicker now, adrenaline boiling over into a need for action, a need for control. But she was always just ahead. Just out of sight. Footprints left on purpose. A glimpse of her silhouette through the vines. A flash of pale shoulder vanishing into the underbrush. They followed like moths chasing the flicker of a flame. The terrain shifted. Thicker roots, tighter choke points, the air dense with the wet stink of fungus and bark. Min pointed to a narrow passage between 2 trees. She went that way. Rollo didn't hesitate. He pushed through. A crack sounded, sharp as a rifle shot, and something whipped from the trees, snagging Rollo's wrist and yanking him sideways. Not far. Just enough to slam him shoulder first into a waiting branch lined with thorns. He growled, tore free, and stumbled back into the group. Blood ran down his arm. "She's done playing," Lev muttered. "She's trying to break us down 1 sense at a time." They regrouped and pushed through the pass. On the other side, they found another clearing. But this one wasn't natural. It was too clean. The ground swept. The branches tied back. A staging area. At the center stood a pole, and strapped to it, barely conscious, stripped of gear, was Corbin. He was alive. Eyes open, though blood-crusted. His lips were moving, but no sound came. Min rushed forward. Lev held him back. "Wait. This is wrong. This is too easy." Rollo didn't wait. He approached, hands up, knife at his side. "Corbin. It's Rollo. We've got you." The second Rollo stepped into the circle, a metal snap sounded underfoot. A cloud hissed upward from a concealed canister buried in the ground, thick, white chemical. Rollo coughed, stumbled, then dropped to one knee. Gas trap. Min grabbed his bandana and rushed in anyway, ducking low, wrapping his scarf around his nose and cutting Corbin loose. Lev stood outside the haze, weapon ready, eyes darting. Then he saw her again. Not running. Just standing. On a high branch above, crouched like a ghost of the jungle itself. She looked down at them, not angry, not even smug. Just focused. Calculating. As if taking notes. Then she vanished into the canopy. They carried Corbin out and retreated to higher ground. By the time they stopped to rest, Rollo had passed out, his pulse sluggish, his breathing shallow. Lev started in 4 and pulled out his last dose of stim flush. Min stared into the trees, jaw clenched. She could have killed him outright. But she didn't. Lev didn't look up. Because she's saving him. Like she saved Jace's vest. Like she saved the dog tags. Min didn't respond. He was remembering the voice on the recorder. That dry humor. That calm cadence. She didn't see them as enemies. She saw them as students. Subjects. That night, the rain returned. Harder this time. Sheets of it slicing through the trees, turning the soil to soup. Their campfire hissed out within minutes, and they huddled under tarps, listening for the sounds they knew were coming. They heard them around midnight. A soft jingle, metal on metal. A deliberate sound. Min stepped out first, weapon raised, flashlight cutting through the mist. The jingle came again, closer. Then silence. He found it 20 feet from camp. A wire hanging from a tree branch, swaying in the rain. At the bottom, tied to it with surgical precision, was Corbin's dog tag. Freshly polished. She was watching. Not just them. Everything. How they moved. How they reacted. How they changed. And she was waiting for one of them to do something different. Min returned to camp and said nothing. He just sat beside Rollo, who was finally stirring, and whispered, "You're not in command anymore. She is. And if we want to survive, we don't chase her. We learn her." Lev looked up from his scan. "You mean think like her?" Min nodded slowly. "No. I mean except we're already in her lesson. And if we fail it, we don't get a retake." Somewhere in the rain-soaked trees, she sat cross-legged on a branch, gear dried beneath the waxed canvas she'd hung like a hammock. She sipped warm water from a leaf, her traps reset, her plans refined. She had time. And patience. But soon, it would be time for her to see who was still worthy of the final test. The jungle looked different now. Not because it had changed, but because they had. Every leaf seemed like a curtain. Every vine, a noose. They no longer moved like soldiers. They moved like prey, careful, quiet, second-guessing every step. The morning after the rain, Rollo was up and walking again, though slower, more cautious. His pride had taken a harder hit than his body. He hadn't spoken much since Min had taken over the previous night, but he hadn't challenged him either. That silence said more than any fight could. Corbin was awake but weak. He couldn't walk without assistance, and they couldn't risk staying still. Lev rigged a stretcher using split poles and paracord while Min mapped a new path west, toward a ridge that might offer some visibility. Finally, some kind of high ground. It wasn't about hunting her anymore. They knew better now. It was about surviving long enough to figure out what she was really after. Min couldn't shake the feeling that they were nearing the end of something. The pattern had shifted. The traps weren't just for pain now. They were for decisions. An hour into the hike, they reached the edge of a dry riverbed. Rocks slick with moss, trees arched like watching giants overhead. Min raised a hand and signaled a full stop. There was movement ahead, faint but deliberate. A shape darting between tree trunks. Too large for a monkey. Too fast for a boar. She was near. Rollo tightened his grip on his rifle. Lev activated a motion scanner and turned in a slow circle. For the first time since they arrived, the device blinked with a clear pulse, directly behind them. They spun around too late. A wall of brush exploded with movement. Not her, but a massive log swinging on ropes, crashing down toward them like a pendulum. Min and Lev dove aside. Rollo grabbed Corbin and fell backwards, taking the brunt of the hit on his side. The log missed its true mark by inches and slammed into a tree with such force that it splintered the trunk. Birds screamed into the air. Leaves poured down like green rain. She wasn't trying to kill them with it. She was hurting them. They looked up and saw why. The ridge was now directly ahead. A narrow path had opened, whether by design or accident. Min didn't believe in accidents anymore. They climbed it cautiously, backs tight, eyes up. The path curved through dense ferns and ended in a wide plateau lined with boulders and ancient tree stumps. From here, they could finally see the horizon, low hills, the jagged lines of rivers far off, and beyond that, the smoke trail of a ship engine. Their evac point was still 3 days away. If they survived that long. Then they saw the bodies. Not fresh. Not gruesome. Arranged. 3 figures, each wearing scraps of recon armor, each positioned sitting against trees as if at rest. Their dog tags had been placed on flat stones in front of them. Their weapons were dismantled and laid at their feet. Min approached slowly. These were the first 3 soldiers who'd gone missing, Echo 0. The ones command had claimed were presumed lost. No blood. No wounds. Just empty eyes staring into the canopy. Lev picked up one of the dog tags and turned it over. Carved into the back, in tiny etched letters, were the words, "They didn't listen." Rollo's face darkened. "She's sending a message. That we don't belong here. That we never did." Min nodded, then glanced at the boulders again. Something about them didn't look right. Too angular. Too intentional. He took a few steps back and looked at the entire ridge. It wasn't just a resting point. It was a map. The stones were positioned in the shape of the jungle's terrain. The bodies, the trees, the paths they'd walked, all mirrored here. The traps. The drop sites. Every location she'd led them through, documented in rock and placement. Min traced a path through the stones with his eyes and saw something they hadn't seen before, a circle. Not random. A perimeter. Something was inside it. Lev spotted it next. "That's the nest. Her main base. She's been pushing us toward it the whole time." Corbin coughed, weakly muttering, "Why? Why bring us there?" Min looked at him without answering. Because that's where the final test would be. And they were almost out of time. They moved at double pace, now retracing the stone map's path. Rollo took point again, as if trying to prove something to himself. Lev stayed close to Corbin. Min walked behind them all, watching the trees. It didn't take long to reach the boundary of the circle. Not a physical one. A psychological one. The air changed. Cooler. Still. No bugs. No wind. Just a tension that stretched across the trees like string. They stepped into a clearing with perfect symmetry, flat ground, trimmed underbrush, and in the center, a broken drone hovering just 2 feet above the soil. It had been modified, stripped of surveillance tech, wired with pulleys and signal boosters. She'd used it to bounce her voice, her commands, her misdirection. This wasn't just where she lived. This was where she commanded the entire battlefield. Rollo stepped toward it, raising his weapon. A soft whirring sound emerged from beneath the drone. Min shouted, "Back!" The blast wasn't deadly. It was blinding. A burst of powdered ash and compressed air filled the clearing, slamming them with sound and grit. Disorientation flooded their senses. And then she appeared. From the trees. From the left. From everywhere. She moved like smoke and hit like steel. Min only caught glimpses, her boots skimming the dirt, the flash of a knife handle, a blur of mud-streaked skin. She wasn't killing them. She was tagging them. Tapping pressure points, slicing vests, marking with dye. Training them in real time. Rollo roared and charged. She sidestepped and sent him sprawling. Lev raised his weapon. She kicked it away. Min stayed still. She stopped in front of him, inches from his face, breathing steady. He saw her eyes now. Focused. Calm. Not cruel. Not kind. Just pure purpose. She pointed behind him, to a tree with one word carved into the bark. Observe. Then she was gone. Again. When the fog cleared, she'd left behind a satchel. Inside was water, ration bars, and an extraction map. She could have killed them all. But she didn't. She had taught them. And now it was their move. They didn't speak for a long time. Not out of fear, fear had passed. What replaced it was something more sobering, more permanent. A kind of reluctant respect that none of them had the words for. The satchel she'd left behind was untouched at first. Not because they didn't need it, they were dehydrated, starved, running low on supplies, but because it felt like opening it too soon would be an insult. Like unwrapping a gift at the wrong moment in a ceremony you didn't understand. Eventually, Min opened it. Inside was a hand-drawn map, inked with charcoal and sap, precise and complete. Every landmark they'd passed. Every ambush they'd walked into. But what chilled him wasn't the accuracy, it was the future paths it included. Routes they hadn't taken yet. Locations she had accounted for before they'd even made decisions. She had been 4 steps ahead the entire time. Not because she was lucky. Because she'd lived here. Trained here. Slept with her back against these roots and read every inch of terrain like scripture. The map led to a high ridge on the far side of the jungle, where a small radio beacon had been circled in red. She'd marked it with one word. Extraction. Below that, a time. They had 12 hours. Rollo stood behind him, reading over his shoulder, his voice rough from silence. She wants us out. Min nodded. She wants us to carry the story? Lev was crouched nearby, reassembling his broken drone from whatever salvage he could find. He didn't speak until the motor spun to life, a low hum echoing through the thick canopy. That was a test, he said. All of it. She was testing us for something. For who would adapt. They moved out within the hour. Corbin, though still weak, walked with help. No one had to carry him anymore. That mattered to him, even if he didn't say it. They followed the map, every twist and incline lined with markers, her old sign language, the kind Min had pieced together over the last day. A slash meant hazard. A spiral meant trick of terrain. A triangle pointed to high ground. What once felt like riddles now felt like instructions. Min found himself decoding them without thinking, as if she'd slipped her language into his bloodstream. By midday, the jungle began to open. The trees stretched thinner, the vines less knotted, the canopy brighter. The sounds of nature returned, not loud, but steady. The chirp of insects. The buzz of something winged. The sound of real life. No traps. No games. Just wild silence. She was gone now. Gone in the way someone who never planned to stay disappears. No trail. No scent. No mistake. They reached the ridge just after nightfall. The radio beacon stood tall and rusted, partially swallowed by the tree line. It buzzed faintly, catching bursts of signal. Min activated it and sent the distress code using the call sign they'd been assigned, one she had surely known. The reply came back in seconds. Evac confirmed. 40 minutes out. Rollo sat down on a rock and said nothing. Lev cleaned his gear like ritual. Corbin drank from the last ration pouch, then leaned back and stared at the stars. No one said her name. Because no one knew it. The extraction ship came low and slow, its lights piercing through the branches like eyes from a god. It hissed as it landed, its rear bay opening like the jaw of something mechanical and indifferent. Min stood last. As the others boarded, he turned and looked back toward the jungle. There was no sound. No flash of movement. But he felt it, eyes. Not hostile. Just watching. One last time. He raised a hand, open palm facing the trees. A farewell. Or maybe a thank you. Then he stepped onto the ramp. The ship lifted off into the dark, the jungle shrinking beneath them until it looked like a single patch of moss on the surface of the world. As they flew, command patched into the onboard comm. A voice crackled through, asking for a sitrep. Min ignored it. Rollo leaned forward and spoke flatly. Mission failed. Objective alive. Enemy unknown. He paused. Then added, but highly trained. Highly intelligent. You need to rethink your files. There was silence on the other end. Then another voice took over, one softer, older. Someone higher up. Did you make contact? Rollo looked at Min. Min nodded. Rollo replied, yes. The voice returned after a pause. And the threat level? Min answered that one himself. The threat level is irrelevant. She's not a threat. Not unless you make her one. The voice didn't reply. Just clicked off. Weeks passed. Back at base, they were debriefed, probed, examined. Psyche evals, gear scans, even lie detection. But nothing they said changed the way Command looked at them. Like they'd come back speaking a different language. The official report was redacted. The mission archived. Echo team reassigned. Quietly. No ceremony. No medals. One evening, Min returned to his bunk and found something on his bedroll. A folded piece of canvas. Inside it, a small wooden totem carved with the spiral triangle symbol. The same one they'd seen etched into the trees. No one knew how it got there. The security footage showed nothing. But Min smiled when he saw it. She was still watching. Somewhere out there, maybe in another jungle, maybe under a different name, she was still setting traps. Still teaching. Still waiting for the next unit foolish enough to think she was unarmed. And the next time they came, she wouldn't need to introduce herself. Her reputation would be waiting for them.